Good morning. This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for Avoid the Maze. Now, I'm not telling you you should avoid life and the path you're going down, but we need to avoid some of those things that stop us in the middle of the road, that sort of frighten us for going forward. My guest today is Donna Conley, and I met Donna through podmatch.com. And I'm really excited about this group because I meet people like Donna who have messages that we all need. And we're going to share hers today. I'm not going to go into her whole bio, it'll be in the show notes so you can read all about Donna. But she's an advocate for mental health. And as I said to her before we came on air, Donna, I think it's only the bravest of us who actually talk about it. Now, I wasn't brave for a long time. I'll admit that. I knew I was having, I didn't know what they were. If I dared have told my parents that I heard voices telling me what to do and what not to do, I think they would have thought I was crazy because their generation didn't understand it. I didn't understand it either, but I knew there was something going on. And it wasn't until maybe about 15 years ago. So I'm 73. So 15 years ago, I had lived a good portion of my life wondering what this was going on in my head. Then I realized it's the things I've been told my whole life that trigger me and say, Karen, don't touch the hot stove. Karen, don't look in that direction. Don't cross the road. So, as you explain who you are and how you got into this field, Donna, tell me, those voices, they're normal, right?
They are, and they're different for everybody. We have our conscious, our subconscious. We're intuitive. Everybody's intuitive, whether they have tapped into it or not. Um, and so some people say the voices in my head, but it could be angels, God, whatever you believe in that's out there helping you to be safe. And when I say be safe, that's where the conscious mind, the ego mind, that's what keeps us trapped from moving forward because it does its job, but it does it too well. Something hurt you in the past, whatever that is, whatever that trauma is, whatever that experience was. And the ego mind was like, well, I will make sure that never happens again. And it fought for me, I had a lot of trauma in my youth. I had a mother who had a failed suicide attempt. I was badly beaten at a babysitter by her husband or boyfriend, whoever he was. And then I lost my brother. I was 13. He was in his 20s. He was a Marine. And I don't have a lot of memories before the age of 13. So my story, I have no recollection of my mom, what happened to her. And that's good. It doesn't need to surface. I don't have to have it surface to heal it. When I was 19, when I was pregnant with my son, I started having these nightmares. There's Freddy Krueger nightmares. So someone was going to kill me. And what it was that beating that I had when I was young, it was a repressed memory that surfaced as nightmares. And then once I finally talked about it and found out it's not nightmare, it's an actual memory, then my nightmare stopped because I was so tired. I was so afraid to fall asleep because I was like, this man is really going to kill me in my dreams. And it turned out it was just repressed memory. So even if you don't know what's driving your behavior today, it could be something that's repressed, and you don't have to know what happened. You don't have to relive what happened to heal. But for me, I see how my ego mind was trying to protect me from feeling like the loss of my brother. So me on the relationship scale, forget it. Don't ask me for advice because I am no good at it because I won't commit. Because if I commit, now if it doesn't work out or something, that's not the same. But if I find the one, and cancer, car accident, something happens, I don't think I could survive the kind of pain that I did when I lost my brother. And so these things. So in life, I've been able to give love, but I've not been able to receive love because of that trauma from my youth. And it led to all kinds of behavioral patterns, drinking, smoking, promiscuity, all these things that aren't me, but all those activities kept my emotions down. And when
You,
it comes to depression, I think there's two kinds. I think depression is like diabetes, type 1 depression and type 2. So type 2 depression is lifestyle. It's what you eat, it's what you listen to, it's what you say, it's what you think. No one can think in there but you, and you can change that. And all those things create depression. Now then there's type 1 depression, right? Like type 1 diabetes. You're born with something and you might need this medication or whatever. There's always help. But type 2 depression, it's a lot of lifestyle. We take on so much. We're so busy. Everyone is go, 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 go. We need downtime. We need it. And, you can be too busy. You can be hiding from trauma. Anything can lead to what I call this type 2 depression.
I love that description of it because you are right. There is that group of people that medication doesn't necessarily cure it, but it tampers it. It allows you to live a little more calmly, a little bit more mindfully, because that medication is working with the chemistry in your body. However, what people have to understand is what medication I may take is not necessarily the medication somebody else should take.
Yeah.
And that is where we fall apart in our society because we get really proud. Oh, I'm taking this and look at me. And then your friend says, oh, wow, I felt the way you did. So maybe if I take that medication, and it's like, that's when you need to see the professionals.
Yes.
You have to trust the professionals.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I have seen, especially with myself. When I finally started to admit I'm happy, but I'm not happy. I don't know why I feel second best to everybody. And when I would share that with my mother, my friends, they would look at me and go, oh, just snap out of it. Well, I didn't know how. I didn't have
Yeah.
the toolkit.
Yeah.
And I went to a couple of doctors and they all gave me this pharmacy of medicine. You're going to take this pill in the morning and this pill in the afternoon and this one at night. And if that's all too much, take this one to calm everything down. And I was so busy taking pills, my brain didn't have time, as you said, to figure out what's going on in my life.
Hmm.
What's causing this?
Yeah.
So your trauma is fairly significant. Okay. Not everybody, thank God, has to go through that. I have a client who says to me, those of us who have gone through severe trauma in our life, we're the special ones. And I said to her, and explain that to me. She said, because God or the angels or somebody decided we were strong enough to handle this. And that's a great way to look at it because then you start looking at how can I feel better than this?
Hmm.
So, but you also mentioned that you don't have to know where the trauma came from.
Yeah. You don't have to know. You don't have to relive it. Some people have had, horrible sexual trauma and things. You don't have to relive it. Talk therapy. I'm all about it. It's very helpful. But to keep talking about some of your trauma, it keeps you in the trauma. You want to move through it. You want to get past it. And that whole letting go thing, that's a whole nother topic. I mean, we can talk on that a little bit later. But you know, even if you are put on a depression med or something, and if you don't even know what's going on, I don't know, I open my mouth, I cry, I don't know what's happening. Um, Look at your life. You know, do you have downtime? Look at the music you listen to. Look at what you watch on television. How much time do you spend watching television? You know, how much time do you go outside? How much, you know, really look at everything, your job. Maybe you have this great career, but this whole path was paved for you by your parents, and you did this whole thing to make them proud. And you have this great job, and you have this great family, and soccer Saturdays, it's all about whatever. But if that job wasn't what you wanted, it can make your whole life miserable. You know, and
Absolutely.
I tell everyone, you got to ask yourself, who am I and what do I want? And don't ask what am I willing to do to get it, because that could be like sell your soul to the devil type thing, but just like, what am I willing to change? Because it's all about you. It doesn't have it. Your life is affected by everything outside of you, and you affect people outside of you. But the only way to really hone in is to cultivate. It's they say love makes the world go round. I think it's a little bit more narrow focus than that. Self love makes the world go round,
Absolutely.
because if you love yourself, you're able to give and receive. It's healthy. Create healthy boundaries, and the more you love yourself, I mean, just the nicer you are to other people and everything that is, um, that happens. So that's what cultivates love is self-love.
And so many of us that are from the baby boomer age, we were taught, um, we weren't told not to give ourselves self love, but
Yeah,
we were told not to talk about it because that way people think that, you're just a mean person because you're taking care of you and you don't want to touch anybody
yeah,
else.
it's selfish. It's, people put shame on you for it. And it's not,
Well,
it's not selfish to know what makes you happy and to do those things. It's not selfish to um take a bath every once in a while. It just be like the door is shut.
yeah,
This is my time. Those aren't selfish things. um I like to meditate. I like to go be outside and hike, and I'll take my shoes off and just get my feet dirty in the mud. I
yeah.
love that. And that's, it's when you pray or meditate, you connect to your source when you're out there in nature, not wearing tennis shoes, walking on asphalt, but when you're literally bare feet on ground, um, you connect to the earth, and that energetic connection, it just really does something to you on the inside. It's really
Oh,
amazing.
absolutely. I mean, living in Northeast Ohio, winter is typically gray from November. Um, we had the sun out yesterday, but not today. But that grayness tends to like get to you.
Yeah,
And um, I guess it was about 10 years ago when really felt like I was hitting rock bottom. I had been pleasing everybody my whole life. Um, and although I loved my job that I had, the culture was killing me
yeah,
because they didn't like the way I was doing it, but I was successful. And it was like, what difference does it make? I'm not doing anything illegal.
yeah,
Okay. I am successful. So let me do what I do best. And it just got terrible. And the words I was hearing being thrown at me, it was like, Karen, you're a fraud. You can't do this job anymore. And so I had to come to my family and say, hey guys, can't do it anymore. And I don't even know what I can do at this point. It's not that I felt I couldn't do anything, but I was stuck. I didn't know
yeah,
what else I could do. And it was middle of winter. It was gray. It was cold. It was snowy. I don't like the winter. And I would stand at my bedroom window in the morning and I would cry looking out at the snow. My husband said something just very calmly to me. And he said, what do you see up in the sky? I said, gray clouds. He says, what's on the other side of the gray clouds? The sun. Do you see it? And all of a sudden, that's all he had to say to me. There was sun out there. Okay. It
Yeah.
was just hiding.
Uh-huh.
So I, taught myself this game to play hide and seek with the sun. And I got the medical help that I needed. And all of a sudden it was like, I still don't like winter, but I'm not going to stand at the window and cry. I'm going to try to get out in that lousy weather because that fresh air opens me up, which I had never realized before.
Mm-hmm.
So you are right. It is about self care and tuning into who you are and admitting what's good for you and what's not. And just because your parent, your best friend, your significant other tells you, what's good for you, that's what's good for them.
Yeah, yeah. I always tell people if you're stuck, the very first thing I would do is practice gratitude. Find out what you're thankful for and remember back to a time that you were happy. What were you doing? Who were you with? Can you do that activity again? Can you do it with someone that you care about? And then if you can, be thankful for it. If you can't, be thankful for the memory, but maybe you can do that activity with somebody else or whatever. But it's bringing back happiness into your life because when people are stuck, they're unhappy and they don't know which way to go and they don't know, you know, they start thinking too much. Well, I have to go to school. I don't have money for school. If I want to change my career, I have all these things, you know, and that's the ego mind taking over going, it's too hard. You're going to get hurt, all these things. And it just keeps us stuck. And like with me, all of my, I've been sober for over 2 years. I haven't had a cigarette in over 6 years and all these things, but all those things that I was doing created health problems. So, so it manifested disease, which I ignored and kept pushing down, which created actual disease. And I was just so sick. And I remember when I went to my primary and depression wasn't even on my radar at the time. And every time I opened my mouth, I would literally just start crying. And it was just like, she's like, okay, you need to see someone, but I couldn't find anyone. It's so hard out there to
It
find
is.
someone that you even click with. Even if you find someone, it doesn't mean that you're going to mesh with them.
Right.
And that's what set me on my quest to do what I do now. But it's like, but I had to do all the work myself. I had to really, and it's hard to look at yourself. What am I doing to myself? What kind of my thought patterns? I finally deduced it to one false limiting belief, which is that I am unimportant. And I could tie it back into all these traumatic things that I've experienced where I was the baby of the family. So I was kind of pushed off. And so I just kept pushing my feelings down because I didn't have a voice and things like that. And that theme carried into my adult life, which, related to the behaviors and activities that I did, that I once thought was fun. I don't anymore, but.
It's interesting because up until recently, I never thought about, where you fall in the family. Are you the youngest? Are you in the middle? Are you in the middle of the middle? Are you the oldest? And I know growing up, I have two older brothers, and probably until I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, my reaction to them was, hey, you guys are lucky. I pushed you out first. I could be the oldest. I could be making all the choices. And they tease me about all the time now. Would you like to be the oldest now? Because, hey, and it's like, too late, guys. But the point I was trying to make is I wanted a part, and I wasn't a part. I'm 8 years younger than my oldest brother, 4 years younger than my middle brother. And it was like, I didn't really fit in with them.
Yeah.
And it hurt. But my mother would say to me all the time, be nice to your brothers. I never heard her tell them to be nice to me, but it was always, I should be nice to my brothers because someday they will appreciate me. And I kept doing it and waiting and waiting. And then once we became all adults, yeah, we all appreciate each other. But it was that long period of growing up that I was still the baby. I didn't know what I was saying. They take precedence. Not only are they older, but they're male.
Mhm.
So, to our listeners out there, your parents and your family may not be saying certain things to you, but if you can sense it, you know, you have to start to understand it. A lot of it is cultural, and
Yeah.
we're not gonna get rid of that. But if we
Yeah.
can understand it, maybe we won't um maybe we won't feel so badly about ourselves. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll learn to speak up.
And like
But I was yeah.
when we grow up, we see, like when that trauma happened to me, I looked to my sister for safety. It wasn't her job to make me safe, but my inner child, that's still that young person that's looking for safety, that she's still part of me.
Yep.
And that's your adult self can rationalize. Yeah, I completely know that. But at times when I realize I feel unsafe and unimportant, it's that 7, 9-year-old me that is coming out, because it's right now we are every age we've ever been, we're every experience we've ever had, it's nothing goes away. You are just a culmination of everything that's happened to you. And, so sometimes when you look at your behavior, it's like, this isn't my rational adult self. This is the inner child. That's a cue that I need to give myself some self love right now. I've kind of neglected me. I spent too much time taking care of my mom this weekend and this and that. And after a busy week, and I need time for me. That's my cue. When those old feelings come up, it's like, I need to baby myself a little bit. And that's okay. You're allowed to do that.
Absolutely. So, when you were sort of giving us your background, you said something about you've always known how to give to others, but you don't get it back in return because of whatever fears there are. But yet you have a child. So, what is that like? Because you don't want your child to grow up feeling the way you did, obviously. So, can you
Yeah.
get love from your child?
I actually can. I think that's different. And but I've raised him to be very independent, just like me. I named him after my brother, and he went on to become a Marine, just like my brother. And he's out of the service now, and he's building houses and loving life.
Oh,
And and it's like sometimes I run to the store and I'm like, "Hey, can I get you some toilet paper or something?" He's so independent. He's like, "Mom, I just went yesterday." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's trying to do something for him at times is hard." But yeah, no, that's a little different. I think that's a different. And he and I, because it was only he and I haven't seen it or heard from his father since I was about 3 months pregnant. And
wow.
so it literally has only been the two of us. And you know it's uh it's very different. People that have made comments to me as he was growing up, he's like, "I've never seen a child parent dynamic like you guys." He's like, you are the hierarchy, but at the same time you work together as a team." And yeah, it's pretty, our relationship's very special.
And and that's really important because I'm sure that has now taught you that there are other relationships that can be good.
Yeah.
Um, and I certainly can understand, uh, and I'm sure it happens for males as much as it does for females. But if something traumatic happens to us as a female, um, it can certainly change everything we do in life.
Yeah.
Uh, and, you know, somebody exposed themselves to me when I was about 7 or 8 years old. And uh, I remember being a teenager listening to all my friends, they were having sex and whatever. And the whole thought of it, I didn't want them to know. I didn't even want to hear about it. But that picture kept coming back to me of this person. And as a teenager, I didn't understand it, but I couldn't get that close to any guy because it was like, what if they did that? And it wasn't until my first marriage that I said something to my husband at the time. And he looked at me and he said, "Yeah, I knew you were strange right from the beginning." And that was the beginning of the end, of our
Yeah.
marriage because it was like, I'm
There was no
just telling you
respect.
what
There was no,
happened.
yeah, he devalued your experience, right there. Yeah.
And so it took me a long time to finally realize, okay, that was then. I've got to move on.
Hmm.
And it wasn't about, like you said, recreating the story in my head over and over again. Because when I did that, that's when I held back.
Yeah.
But when I realized, okay, you know, that was then, I need to move forward. How can I do that?
Hmm.
And I will tell you, in my case, it was getting divorced and finding a group of people that I was just comfortable with. I
Yeah.
wasn't looking for love. I wasn't looking for a relationship. And once I found that comfort and realized I could tell them just about anything,
Yeah.
it was like I started to heal. Now, occasionally, yeah, that picture does come in my mind and it sends chills up and down my spine, but I realize what it is for the moment. And then it's what can I do for me to feel good again?
Hmm.
So you said you have a sister, you have a brother who passed. Um, your sister, are you still close with your sister? Do you still have a relationship?
Yeah, there's been times when we've been on again, off again. Yeah, she was in a bad marriage, and I realized I couldn't save her. She had to save herself. I was going to wind up in jail if I kept trying, and yeah, so there was a divide then, but we're very close now. Yeah,
And and I love how you said that you knew that if you got involved, what that was going to do to you. And
yeah,
so many of us, we think that we have to save somebody else.
yeah.
Um, that's why I decided that after 2 years, I finally announced, yes, I'm going to start coaching. And my friends and family just looked at me and said, "Well, it's about time," because I've been denying it. And the reason I was denying it, I needed to make sure that I was okay with me, that I wasn't going to throw any of my history that is definitely not good onto somebody else. Um, so it took me the 2 years. Well, I was preparing and thinking to finally say, okay, now I can do this. And I'm sure for you, when you are meeting somebody, those coaching thoughts come into your mind as you're meeting them. Am I right or
Yes,
wrong?
yes,
It's like, "Oh, I can see that in them." And that was the thing that I was nervous about, that I was going to start spotting things and start saying to people, you know, "Have you ever thought of going to a coach before?" Um, but I realized coaching for me is so much better than my past of going to a therapist or a
hmm,
psychiatrist. And they do great work,
yeah,
but they're very specific,
yeah,
okay? A coach, you could work with on and off for years,
hmm,
okay? If you're going to that same therapist for years, you're not resolving things.
yeah,
What the coach does is help you see what it is that you want to look at.
yeah. Yeah, I have a coach, and I was trying to save the world by not using as much plastics, right? So I stopped buying bottled water, and I bought these filter pitchers. I have them at work, at home, and I realized I wasn't drinking as much water now. So I'm talking to the coach, and it just when she said it, it seemed so obvious, but it broke my brain at the same time. I was putting my pitchers. I only drink room temperature water, but I was put my pitchers of water in the fridge. So in the morning when I pulled it out, it was cold, and I wouldn't touch it until it became room temperature. So I wasn't drinking any water all morning long. And she's like, just leave your pitcher out on the counter. It broke my brain for a second. I was just like, can I do that? It's just something that's simple, but yeah, coaches can really help you get, you know, to help you change behavior quickly and things like that. It's like talking to a friend, except they're really going to try to direct you to get you somewhere. But yeah,
Yeah, I had a little issue this past weekend, so I called one of my coaches and I said, I know I'm not thinking straight. I know that I'm creating this problem in my head. And she said, well, just blurt it out. Tell me. And I told her. And she said, so you created it? More I thought about it. No, not really. The other person. And do you have control over that other person? No. Do you have control how you think about that? I said, yes. And she said, and do you want to be upset about it now? And for some reason, my answer was, yeah, I did. And she said, okay, then deal with it.
yeah,
Be upset, see where it takes you. Well, by the end of our hour, I didn't want to be angry anymore. And she said, so what happened? And I said, I think I just had to get it out into the atmosphere
yeah.
because it was stuck in my gut.
Hmm.
My brain kept saying something hurts. Oh yeah, that hurts. But I wasn't getting it out. And
Yeah,
there for 45 minutes, we talked. And at the end of it, she said, so, and I go, I don't want to be angry anymore.
yeah, yeah.
And
That
to our
that
listeners,
brings
it
up
probably sounds like, woo woo, but it's not.
no, that brings up two things for me. One is you can choose how you want to feel at any time. You can literally, if you see a kid having a temper tantrum and then it's like, are you okay? Yeah. It's like you can actually do that. And also, all emotions are valid. Some people think if they're angry and that something's wrong with them. I shouldn't be angry now. And you're just devaluing yourself. Anger is a valid emotion. It helps you decide what's wrong. It helps you find your passions. It helps you in so many ways, but we weren't taught to listen to our emotions. It's like if you're angry, it's like you just need a timeout. You listen to this. What's happening. It helps you. Anger helps you create boundaries. you know and what I do with working with energy in the body too, see, anger can be high or low. If it's low anger, like I was at a gas station and there was somebody that was yelling at another person, and he's flailing his arms all around. That's obviously low level anger because it's not productive. He's just reacting to something
Sure.
versus responding. So when you can respond to something and it can help you, decide that you want to make a difference in the world, it helps you find your passions and all these things. It's like, this is wrong. Well, how do you make it right? Do you want to make it right? You're allowed to ask yourself those questions.
And the nice part about it is that we don't have to put the blame on anything.
No.
I used to try to describe this to somebody. They said, Karen, you come up with all these great ideas. And I'd always say, excuse me, they're not my ideas. I would always give somebody else the credit for it because I thought it was a great idea. But if it came from me, I thought people wouldn't appreciate it.
No.
And I was doing a presentation amongst high school seniors. Not one of them had applied to college yet. And my talk was, you don't have to go to college. There are other things that you can do. But when you walk across the stage and get your diploma, your parents don't expect you to come back into the house and sit and play video games or watch TV all day. So college is an option. Trades, and I went through the whole thing, but I kept quoting other people who had said this before. And towards the end of my presentation, a young girl raised her hand and she said, "Do you believe what all those people said? Or are you just telling us?" And I looked at her and I said, "Well, I believe it." She said, "Well, then tell me what you believe." And it took an 18-year-old in that room to
Mhm.
make me realize that, you know what? You may not have liked these things that I said, quoting by other people. So I thought I was keeping myself safe.
Yeah,
Well, you can't play it safe all through life.
yeah.
And so that's when I started opening up more and more. And I'll never forget my husband one day said to me, "I always knew you had a voice." He said, "But now I can hear it."
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Fear keeps us. We have our own thoughts, we have our own emotions, and we keep it inside because if we say something, maybe our partner is going to leave us. Maybe we play that game with us instead of just saying what you think and how you feel, which will make your life better because you are able to, you know, deal with things that are going on inside of you instead of keeping it in. That's like that's huge to get to that point. And I think a lot of the younger people today, because my dad's in his 80s and I got that hard love. I got, and I think that the whole energetic shift in the world is shifting towards, honoring our feelings now and stuff. And it's definitely, I think some of the younger people, they seem, people say they're lazy, they're this, they're that, but they can really give you some good insights, especially
absolutely.
on these type of levels. Yeah.
So, you're in the midst of writing a book. So let me ask the first question, which I'm sure you've answered many times. Why a book?
I well, as I was healing and I was doing all my thing and I started manifesting with the moon and my friends were like, "Okay, what are you doing?" So I said, "Well, I've started manifesting with the moon, doing certain things all month long, every month." That was and they were noticing changes in me. And so they're like, "Okay, A, what is that? And B, we want to do what you're doing." So I started doing these little moon reports, and it was literally small. There was three of them, including me. There was four of us, and because I was afraid to tell people, afraid what they would think if I told them what I was doing. Um, and then in 2021, I tore my Achilles, and so literally, I was stopped dead in my tracks. And so I was like, well, what can I do? I can't go hike or anything right now. So I asked them, I said, what do you all think if I turn these moon reports into a book? And they were like, do it. You have to do it. So that's how it started. I didn't even know I was writing a book at first. And, I became very sedentary because I physically injured myself. And I launched Wild Moon Healing last September.
So, what is there in the moon that we can get that energy from? Because to me, I think of the sun and not the moon and the stars.
Well, the sun is more what's considered masculine energy. That's the doing. Like all day long, you're up and you're go go go. But the moon is more on the emotional side, which is where I you have to heal from trauma and you have to learn who you are to. And so the moon shines light on the darkness, right? So what you hide, what part of you do and you don't have to share all of you to
Sure.
everyone, but what are you hiding from yourself, the world? The moon helps you see those things. And that's being yourself isn't about like shadow work. People think that's demons and stuff. No, it's just someone made fun of you one time and that little piece of you broke off and you shoved it down because guess what? That's not normal. Someone laughed at me, so I'm never going to do it again. But that's part of who you are. Just because that person wasn't very nice, it doesn't mean that you should have shoved that part of you down.
So, I love that thought of, yes, we all hide things inside. I'm sure um, if you were to open somebody up and you could see all those emotions and all those stories, we'd realize how much was hidden. Um, in 2016, my mother had a stroke that left her blind. She didn't know she was blind though. She swore she saw all of us and whatever. Um, but it was leading to her death. We were just told she's 96 and a half years old. This did more damage than we know. She could be around for a week. She could be around for years. Um, so I left my family here in Ohio and I went up to Michigan and I stayed with her. And I always thought I had this love-hate relationship with her. And the first couple weeks she was very, very coherent and I knew I had to say something. And I said, "You know how much I love you?" And she said, "Yes, I love you too." I said, "But then why do we bicker so much? Do you really not like me?" And, you know, she grabbed my hand and she said, "We're so much alike. We're doers." She said, "So if I'm doing and you interrupt, I'm going to get angry."
Yeah.
And I thought the same thing. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm the same way. And so as we started to talk about it, I found things inside of me that I had just not even dealt with. But I listened to her. And there were two major things she said to me. She said, she still is angry that she allowed her parents to decide between her and her brother who would go to college. There were 7 children in the family. She was the youngest. Her brother went to college, was the second youngest. And they put their money on him because they said to my mother, "Someday you can marry a wealthy man and he'll take care of you."
Mhm.
That's not what my mother wanted. Yeah, she wanted to get married and wealth would have been nice, but she knew that she could take care of herself.
Yeah.
And she said to me, "I wanted to go to college. I wanted to be a teacher, and I would have been a damn good teacher."
Yeah.
And my heart started breaking for her. But about a week or two later, as she was sort of knew what she was talking about, didn't know what she was talking about, I said to her, "Hey, mom, you have been a teacher your whole life." And she goes, "How?" I said, "Remember you went to that computer class back in the 60s and you became a key punch operator?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "What happened the week after?" "You were teaching new employees." And just this broad smile on her face. I said, "You taught one of your sons how to knit." "Oh, I did." And then she said, "I tried to teach you, but you were no good." I said, "You're right." But the more I could tell her about the things that she did
Mhm.
teaching, you could just see that she was like, that she had
Yeah.
met what she wanted to meet in life. And
Yeah.
I think that's important that we have those conversations because there are a lot of people walk around in this world who are unhappy because nobody knows them and they don't know
Mhm.
how to tell.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love how you helped her realize she's been
It,
teaching her whole life.
Yeah, and it was so I mean, the 2 things, knowing that we were so much alike, we were doers, and we didn't want anybody interrupting. Did we want help? That's something else, because then we wanted to dictate what other people could do. But, if
Yeah.
she was baking, she didn't want anybody else to come in there and do it because that's what she was doing. But if you wanna go wash the dishes, that would have been fine. Um, it's but if we don't know that about people, and
Mhm.
I'm getting better at explaining that to my family and friends that, like my husband will say to me as we're finishing up dinner, usually waits till I have all the dishes in the kitchen, and then he'll say, "Do you want help, dear?" And now I think about it, and I find one thing that he can at least do.
Yeah.
He asked, And so I can't be mad that he didn't do anything. But those are the things that we learn as
Hmm.
we become more mindful of what we're doing.
Yeah.
So how can we find your book?
Oh, you can find it on Amazon, Wild Moon Healing. I have a website, wildmoonhealers.com, and there's a link to the book there. And you can actually, there's a pop-up. You can put your email in and you'll get the first chapter to see if it's something that you're interested in.
That is wonderful. And you also have a podcast, correct?
No, I haven't started that yet.
Oh, you haven't started it yet.
That's on my
Okay.
wish list. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Sometimes we get a little overzealous of everything that we're doing, but you are more than welcome to come on anytime because I'll tell you, there is just so much to learn about ourselves.
Yeah.
And I look at it that if I can do it, because I'm not that, um, I believe in myself, but I don't come across that way a lot of times. And so
Mhm.
I tell clients and prospective clients, look at all you have to do is try.
Yeah.
Take that baby step, and maybe that's as far as you want to go. You
Hmm.
can stop there. Nobody's going to tell you have to go any further. But if you want to go further, then take the next step.
Yeah.
Um, and I found, just recently last week when I was in Texas taking care of my son who had emergency surgery, um, in the past when he was younger and he would get sick, he wouldn't want me anywhere near him. It's a very strange situation. But here he was, quite ill. And, but I was reading his body language and listening to his voice.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it made a whole lot of difference because I wasn't jumping up and saying, hey, do you want an ice pack? Hey, do you want a glass of water? Hey, it's lunchtime. I would go check on him in his room. And if he was, and he could barely sit up, but if he was sitting up a little bit, they gave me the clue that he was really trying to get up and move around a little bit. Um, Now that I've left him back in Texas and I'm in Ohio, um, I'm very careful about how I call him. I mean, he's in his 30s. He's a young man. He's on his own. He doesn't need mama reminding him to take his medicine. Um, but occasionally he'll say to me, which he did yesterday, Mom, I'm really tired. And it was early in the day. He says, I'll never sleep through the night. He said, I'm going to put an alarm on for my phone, but could you put it on too? And I said, any special reason? And he said, these pills make me really out of it. And if I don't get through to you or you don't get through to me, I want you to call 911. And it was like, it's all it took. And his alarm obviously went off before mine because I got a phone call that woke me up. Um, but I was so glad because we had that conversation. We knew how to
Yeah.
take care of each other. So to all of our listeners, uh, get in touch with Donna. I will have all of her information in the show notes. We're going to have you back on because this was just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
And so enjoyed having you here. Um, I'm so grateful that you have a relationship with your son and your sister because we all need people in our life. So,
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me as a
oh,
guest. I really enjoyed this conversation.
absolutely. You take care now. Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye.